Call to order the special meeting of the Santa Barbara School Board for Tuesday, November 3rd. We will start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
And we have Vivian Rodriguez with us tonight for translation.
Sí, muy buenas noches y bienvenidos de parte de la Junta Directiva del Distrito Escolar de Santa Bárbara. Si hay alguien que necesite la ayuda de un intérprete, levante la mano para darle un audífono. Gracias. Thank you.
Gracias. I'd also like to point out that we have headsets for the hearing impaired, if anybody needs those, as noted on the slide. Then we have introductions, proclamations, presentations, or recognitions. Dr. Sarvis?
Yes, we are in for a treat tonight. Franklin Elementary School's principal, Casey Kilgore. Casey, please come forward, is here with her 5th grade students to perform a Santa Barbara opera scene from Hansel and Gretel. Casey?
Hello, thank you for having us. Since I had to be here anyways, I decided this would be the night that our kids would perform. So our 5th grade, we do a thing in the fall where every single one of our 5th grade goes through a few weeks with Opera Santa Barbara. So I'm going to invite my friends to come up and talk a little bit more about, from Opera Santa Barbara, about what happens within those weeks, and the kids will do a short performance.
Hello, thank you for having us. I'm Deborah Bertling, and our team members are Renee Hamati at the piano, and we have Jamie Chamberlain, Eric Karampitan, and Gabriel Silva, a tenor who will be playing the Parpignol. We will be doing an excerpt from La Boheme by Puccini. And as the kids get into place, I just want to say there is a packet of information for all of you that includes the lesson plans, the overview, and one thing I'd like to add to all of that information is I think the thing that makes the Opera Santa Barbara Outreach Program so effective is we get the kids involved from day one, and instead of just teaching at them or sharing things with them, we actually get them in the scenes, and they enjoy it. So they're going to show you the Parpignol chorus.
Come buy your Christmas toys from Parpignol.
Parpignol, 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 Parpignol. Parpignol, Parpignol, Parpignol. With his cars all filled with toys. Follow Parpignol. Parpignol, Parpignol, Parpignol. I want a trumpet and a boat by a nice little ship. I want a carriage and a dove by a horse and a whip.
Well, before the students leave the room, I'd like to thank you all for your beautiful voices and your wonderful joy that you've brought to us. It's a wonderful way to start the meeting. And I want to tell you that I attended Franklin School, and so I'm very, very appreciative of what you did here. And I wish we had a program like that when I was there. So you guys are very lucky, and hopefully one of you will be up here someday. And thank you to all the teachers and to Ms. Kilgore and all of our parents. Thank you very much. This was a wonderful, wonderful presentation.
And a reminder that you can watch yourselves on TV this Saturday at 5 o'clock on Channel 18 if you want to watch the performance.
All right. Well, principals, that's how it's done. I know you're all here in support of Franklin School tonight, right?
I want to hear them do it.
Oh, well, we could do something like that. Well, board, welcome to Election Day. We'll get a count later in the evening, I'm sure. Congratulations first goes out to Santa Barbara Community Academy. The Academy is eligible for the 2010 California Distinguished School Award. The next step is the completion of an application and the validation process, and I understand that, that it's not a highly competitive thing. Of course, Eric Nichols gets to take over the reins and complete the application, but congratulations to the staff, Amy Alzina, Eric Nichols at Community Academy. The Academy qualified for the award because the school made adequate yearly progress. Its academic performance index score is above 795. Now, there are a number of different categories, principals and board. But the school's index was above 795. The school made all growth targets school-wide for all numerically significant subgroups. And finally, the Academy met the state criteria for closing the achievement gap. Each of the Academy's numerically significant subgroups grew more than the statewide API growth for the group. Congratulations to the Academy school community. Couple of other announcements. We have another community forum for special education parents, those interested in special education. This will be tomorrow night at Santa Barbara Junior High, 6:30, and it will be conducted primarily in Spanish. Yes.
However, we do want to point out that English-speaking parents are invited to attend.
Yes.
And there will be
It will be translated.
Yes.
Good. Thank you. The board brief. My office regularly issues a report to the board called the board brief. It's a collection of reports and articles on school items and news on the district. A copy of the board brief is on display in the reception area. The October 30 board brief included 3 items that I would like to call your attention to. First, there was a memo on probationary and tenure track teachers. Specifically the status for certificated employees. We currently have 65 teachers in temporary positions that are being held for teachers who are on leave, for teachers who have part-time positions with rights back to a full-time position, for those who are in job shares, or in positions that have only temporary funding. In all, about 9% of our 725 teachers are in temporary assignments. The rest are in probationary or tenured permanent assignments. This is also about 20 fewer temporary teachers in temporary assignments than we've had in the past. We've been converting to permanent positions whenever possible. Second, our business office reported that Godby Research Community Opinion Polls cost for measures H and I was $35,000, $35,790. That was a question the board asked at our last meeting. And finally, the board brief calendar noted that the November 19 meeting of the board and Goleta City Council joint meeting will be held at Dos Pueblos High School. It will be a 3:30 start to tour a couple of facilities on the campus. The actual meeting will start at 4 o'clock at Dos Pueblos in the library. They have an event that night in the auditorium, and board, you're welcome to attend the performance in the auditorium later that night. Upcoming events in November. San Marcos High School's Fall Play Dracula begins November 13. Santa Barbara High School's production of Pinocchio begins November 12. Dos Pueblos High School presents You Can't Take It With You beginning November 14. Santa Barbara Junior High School's fall play Stephanie Hero begins November 19. Please visit our website for more information. And tonight I believe we do have a student report. Kevin Davis, are you here tonight? Yeah. There you are. Thanks. would you like to come up to the podium?
Thank you for having me. Like he said, I'm Kevin Davis. I'm from Dos Pueblos High School. I'm the ASB representative there. I'm just going to start off with just telling you guys about a couple activities we've had in the past couple months. We just recently got done on October 16th with a DP Rocks concert. And what this was a fundraiser for the art department. And what happened was we invited 5 student bands, 1 teacher band, and 1 band from Los Angeles. And it's a fundraiser for the art department, like I said, and many of the art classes and clubs made products like bracelets, things of that sort, and sold them for a profit. So that was a huge success. I'm proud to say that all football games this year have been held at Scott O'Leary Football Stadium. We're proud to have our first homecoming game ever this Friday there at 7 o'clock against Ventura High School. Along with that, the homecoming dance is this upcoming Saturday from 8:30 to 11:30. I also like to say that Dos Pueblos is looking better each month. In case many of you don't know, we used to be under fences, under construction a lot. And now we're really trying to develop the landscape. And a big thanks to Beautified EP. A bunch of volunteers and support from Glida Valley Beautiful has made the school look so much better. And it's obvious to tell if when you guys stop by, just look around, you can see landscape starting to show up. We just finished a warm clothes drive led by student leaders, and it was for a community of friends. It was a big success, and we're proud to say we're part of that. Along those lines, November is going to be a busy month for us. We've got several drives coming up. We've got Holiday Basket Drive through Community of Friends. We have a blood drive through the Tri-County Blood Bank. We have a toy drive from the Unity Shop and Community of Friends. And we also have a canned food drive also from the Unity Shop and Food Bank. And what's good about these things is they're all run by student leaders. So it's a good thing to get involved with. As Dr. Sarvis said, we have our fall production, You Can't Take It With You, starting the 14th of this month. So we're excited about that. And although we're proud of all our Charger athletes, we're especially proud of the girls volleyball team. They're ranked number 2 in the nation, and their only 2 losses were to the number 1 team. So we're looking forward to trying to get them back later. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. It sounds like DP has got their work cut out for them. Thank you. Okay, and that concludes the superintendent report. We will move on to the announcement of closed session action. The board did not take any action in closed session, so we have nothing to report out. So we will move on to public comments. We have 2 people who would like to speak to public comment. We have Ken Locke, Mr. Locke, and we have Kate Smith. Mr. Locke, you'll have 3 minutes, and this is your time to speak on any items that are not on tonight's agenda.
My name is Kenneth Locke. I've been doing stuff like on YouTube with education. I've been here before. I have some insight into kind of education a little bit. And so far, right now we have an economic crisis right now. And it's just kind of funny from my perspective. They think that they can actually reform, say, Wall Street, which there's some news stories out that, there's actually has been no reformation of the Wall Street in the past, say, 4 years of this crisis. And what I'm here to say is actually you're not going to reform Wall Street. You need to reform education, because actually education has failed us. Actually, the whole thing's a failure. And I've been raised up as a teacher. I think this coincides, all these events, with kind of this age of Aquarius that we're coming to. I bear witness of a couple of enlightenments. I understand the concept of what enlightenment is in relation to kind of an age, another paradigm. I just did a video and put it up on YouTube called Achieving Enlightenment Through Tennis. And been there, done that. And I'm here to actually provide the means for a person to become enlightened through the means of tennis. And kind of to cross-reference Christianity and kind of the rich man, Some people are going to have some difficulties with this. And we can kind of understand that. And I'm hoping that somewhere along the line, this enlightenment actually kind of takes off somewhere and we can actually recognize it, because ultimately I can see this economy is actually going to completely fail us and we're going to be left with kind of nothing, whatever. But again, I'm on YouTube. I did a video that goes over the concepts of what it means. It's called Who is the Most Wealthy and Healthy? And it's kind of like right now I don't think we understand the connection between that because of this economy. I'm sorry to say that the wealth is not really healthy. Who knew? But again, YouTube, Kenneth Loch, L-O-C-H, and that's the way you check my videos out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Locke. Kate Smith. Ms. Smith, you will have 3 minutes to speak on public comment and on the board brief, which is included in public comment. Would you please come to the podium?
Members of the Santa Barbara Board of Education. Regarding the board brief, there is a special education self-review entitled Purpose of the Special Education Self-Review, and I'm requesting that this information be handed out to the special education parents. It's desperately needed to understand the self-review, and I'm requesting time to speak to the California Department of Education self-review team. Just continuing on with Kenneth Loch's information regarding education reform, which is going to be a huge issue after President Obama finishes with healthcare reform. I'm asking you to visit sbschooltalk.com and applecorepress.ning.com. William Auchi on ednews.org wrote about education reform today and the need to decentralize the administration. I am promoting a new school paradigm called AppleCore, which promotes child-centered, teacher-directed, parent-involved schools. The Parent Revolution is partially funded by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Now, in terms of my issues, I have several complaints against district personnel and against the school board. I would prefer to discuss these issues in private at a closed session public comment, but am not allowed to, according to your legal counsel, Craig Price, who, I believe, has a poor understanding of the Brown Act and Americans with Disabilities Act. So I need to explain that I suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder from the retaliation against me during my landmark and epic battle with the school district. When I discuss issues pertaining to the school district's abuse, their pattern and practice of retaliation, and the child endangerment, I have an emotional breakdown. Please accommodate my post-traumatic stress disorder by allowing me a little extra time to finish my comments. I was disqualified from the school board ballot. Brian Sarvis said in a KEYT...
Ms. Smith, you have 15 seconds.
Will you accommodate me for another minute?
If we will give you another minute, it will come out of later time if you would like to speak to other items.
Okay. I will let you know that Denise DeBelfay has ruled that I was illegally disqualified. I had a little bit of an emotional meltdown when I read the letter from Principal Switek when she said Kate Smith and her family lives in the school district, but she lives near Gibraltar Dam. That is incorrect. The maps that you used to have did not show the district boundary lines. It was just cut off. I want to thank you for changing the maps to reflect that 50 yards of Gibraltar Road are cut off and are considered to be in the College School District. The College School District is Solvang. I ran for the school board in 2000 at that address.
Ms. Smith, your extra minute is now up. Thank you very much. And we will move on. That concludes public comment. We will move on to the consent agenda. Do I have any items that board members wish to pull? Dr. Noel? Okay, any others? Then do we hear a motion?
I move to approve the remainder of the consent agenda.
Is there a second? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. The motion carries unanimously, and we will return to item 2 at the end of the agenda. I'm sorry, item D2. That moves us on to our action agenda. We will begin with item E1, approval of single plans for student achievement for all non-charter elementary and secondary schools. And I believe Dr.
Yes.
Sarvis, you will be introducing this item.
Well, this is tonight's main event. We have all of our principals here to answer questions on the part of the board. Dr. Cynthia White will begin the presentation. Dr. White is our Director of Curriculum and Categorical Programs and was the one primarily responsible for pulling these together in a format that is, as board members have already commented on, is much more consistent and uniform.
Thank you. Good evening, board members. And I want to acknowledge that all of our principals are here and they've put a lot of work into these plans. The process of a single plan annual update to the board is really about where we are in an ongoing process with our plans. Our plans are always in draft form because we are always looking at whether our plans are working and if the way we are spending our money is impacting our student achievement. So with that in mind, when you look at the single plans, you will see some of the plans that do not have their budgets completed, and in part that's because we started the single plan approval process with a budget freeze. So many of the plans were put together without the funding completely in place, and some of our principals were unable to meet with their committees, their school site councils, until after that process had taken place. And so we have the signature pages tonight for you on with the school site council lists and the signature pages. So we're actually talking about changing this process and moving it more in line with the budgeting process and moving this single plan approval process to the spring. And there are a couple of reasons to consider that as a school board, and I'd like you to think about, how that would be helpful for, in particular for our principals, because they would be able to take, if you will, a budget that is just a predicted budget and put a full plan in place, and then as the plan changes, then the budget would then change with that plan. So if you had to go into budget cuts, then they'd be cutting from a plan that was already fully in place. One of the things that I wanted to talk with you, let me see if I'm doing this right, thanks, is how the single plan relates to the LEAP plan. And our LEAP plan in both elementary and secondary are very, very close to what we're doing as a group. And some of our district initiatives this year, which I've been here to speak with you about, our newest one, of course, is Read 180 in System 44. A second one would be that we have pyramids of intervention, or RTI squared. I couldn't make that do a squared thing. I don't know what was going on with my, but anyways, our pyramids of intervention, this is a new thing for us to bring to you. And so we are looking at each one of the schools is in a different place in terms of implementation of their pyramid of intervention or their RTI squared plan. And some of our pyramids have 3 tiers and some have 4, and that's because we just haven't standardized that exactly at each one of our levels. Our elementary principals are working on that, a more standardized format. Our junior high principals are really much more closely aligned in terms of their pyramids, and it's something that our high schools are in the process of talking about, putting a more consistent pyramid in place. A pyramid of intervention sounds easy to do because you just take a triangle and put interventions into it. That is not so easy to do. The base of the pyramid, where we're offering all students services, that's our easiest place to do a pyramid of intervention. It's then who and how we move kids up through the pyramid for more intensive levels of intervention that's difficult. And it's difficult to be consistent. It's difficult to make that a effective procedure for the students. And a pyramid of intervention presumes that you've got a pretty good way of diagnosing a student's when student needs to enter more intensive intervention and when they need to exit it. So our interventions, our pyramid of intervention, and this model is something that we hope to bring to you in a much better format next year. So this is our first attempt at that. We are also doing professional learning communities. And again, it sounds easy to bring together teachers. That's not so easy to do, to change the format of talking about in a committee meeting what you're going to do on a field trip and switch that to how we're using data to inform our instruction. Our elementary school district, for the first time this year, is benchmarking using the EduSoft benchmarking data system analysis. And so this is the first time that we're taking data and finding very interesting things. I think, one of the things in talking with Cleveland elementary school teachers about Read 180 is at the beginning of the school year, they did baseline data testing, using DIBELS, which is a national oral language measure, and they found that the Lexile count and the DIBELS matched. So it was great data. So they had strong data to be able to place students appropriately in either Read 180 or System 44 or one of their other interventions. So we're getting better, and we're using sophisticated tools that help us better do our jobs. AVID, of course, is something that I've brought to the board on a number of occasions. It's AVID as an elective course in the secondary and AVID elementary. And AVID is being infused into all of our curriculums, and much of our professional development that we're doing is AVID related. I mention here academic language development in Kate Kinsella for 2 reasons. We're using this in both our Read 180 system and also in the Envision Elementary Math. You'll find elements of Kate Kinsella's academic conversation. I wanted to mention here that the focus of the P20 Council to Jack O'Connell has been on what they call ACEs, and so the focus in the state is on access, student access to curriculum, on the culture of the school, the teachers' expectations, and the strategies that we are using. And so these are also some of our district initiatives as well. Our LEAP and our single plans have a required focus on reading, and so it's PLCs for Read 180 and System 44, acquisition of academic language, and focus on expository text and expository writing, and our benchmarking system to inform our instruction. These are all things that I've brought to you in the past, and you'll find those in the single plans. The math, we've SB 472, which is the professional development for our instructional materials. 150 of the elementary teachers have already received that in training, so that's 60 hours, 40 hours of training with 80 hours of follow-up. Most of our junior high school teachers have had the CPM or the Holt SB 472, and that's required for high school algebra teachers only. We are focusing on universal access strategies in our LEAP team, and you'll see those things followed through in PLC meetings, and using our benchmark data to inform instruction. Parent involvement is an extremely important part of a single plan. It's an important part of our school community. It's important to us that parents are involved in the education, and so these are some of the requirements, and those are through the site councils, of course, the PTAs, and other advisory councils.
Ms. White, can I just interrupt you for 1 minute?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Because this topic is fairly heavily laden with some academic jargon, and
Am I going
well,
overboard?
and initials, et cetera. I'm just for the sake of the public who might be listening and the public who might watch on TV, if we could maybe, if you go back one more, for example, we have some of the acronyms, et cetera. If you could try whenever possible to just mention what those stand for so that people are aware.
I'm sorry, I don't even realize when I'm doing that.
Well, I think none of us, we catch ourselves all the time. And especially this topic because we are dealing with a lot
Right.
of them. So we may not be able to do it throughout, but just for some of them, if that would be helpful, I think, to some people.
Okay, Envision is the name of our math adopted series for our elementary math textbook. CPM stands for College Preparatory Math. It's what we use for our 8th grade algebra. And Holt is the name of the publisher for our secondary math adoption. Universal access strategies means that we are offering differentiated strategies for students with disabilities, English learners, and the new math materials, the new adopted materials are fabulous. The teachers are commenting that they've never had such good tools to help students access higher order thinking skills, more complex math. We're hearing that from our kindergarten and first grade teachers, that the math is much more complex, and because it's much more complex, it's going to prepare our students much better for the transition between elementary and secondary. So sorry about that. I don't think I used any jargon here.
Madam President, I wanted to ask a question. Would it be okay to ask now?
Is it okay for you
It's
for us
fine.
to interrupt with
Yes.
with our questions? Thank you. Yes, Dr. Noel?
Back
back.
to the previous.
Back. Parent, reading, math.
Yeah.
Math.
That one. When I see that there, do I read that as meaning that this is now, that all of these things are currently being done in all of our schools, or that this is projected, prospective?
You know, we have 150 teachers who are trained in the Envision, and Abby Vasquez, our teacher on special assignment, is visiting classrooms and is absolutely, she comes back and we debrief on the visits around the district and is talking about some pretty amazing things that are happening in our math classes. And they're using their training, and we have follow-up training meetings where the teachers come and talk about strategies. I believe that you'll hear from, if you ask any of the principals at the PLC meetings and grade level team meetings, they are talking about math strategies. And again, that goes back to the ACES of the CDE's P20 Council recommendation. It is strategies, instructional strategies, it's access, it's the culture of a classroom. Things are changing for the teachers because they have tools that are so helpful to them. And in the past, although we've had, a demand for materials to help students access higher order thinking, like math word problems and things like that, we haven't had the tools. And so it's different to be able to use your materials in a way and see your students perform. It's very exciting.
My question really had to do more with universal access strategies. Are they now implemented in all of our classrooms?
Yes. In all of our schools, yes. We still have 50 teachers that we need to train on the math materials. And so I would say that you know, the 150 teachers that have been trained know how to do it, and we're walking through their classrooms and seeing it happen.
So if I walk into a high school English language arts class, I will see differentiation according to the California frameworks on,
This is the math.
ideas of universal
This
access.
is that's the math. And in reading classes, with the high school reading programs, the teachers who are teaching Read 180 and System 44 have over 60 hours of training. This November, we're training 9th and 10th grade English teachers in the Holt publishing series. And so many of our teachers have not been trained yet for the reading language arts in high school. So that's going to start training next week. So I'd say wait till January, give them a chance to practice, and then visit our 9th and 10th grade classrooms. They will have, all of them received training in Jonathan Lemaster, deep reading and critical writing strategies, and then they'll also have had the Holt training, the publisher training, which is an abbreviated SB 472, and that was on your consent agenda item this evening to approve that training. Okay, whoops, wrong way. Parent involvement, English learners. I've presented many times to you on the English learner initiatives that we've, our focus, of course, is in elementary school. All of our teachers are trained in Susanna Dutro's focused approach, and we're using Read 180 and Carousel of Ideas in System 44. We have two kinds of English learner programs, a structured English immersion program for our English learners, and then the English language mainstream classes where our students receive 30 minutes of ELD in elementary and 20 in secondary. Also part of our single plans would be the Title IV piece, which is the safe and drug-free schools. And you'll find life skills in the 7th and 8th grade curriculum, Too Good for Drugs and Too Good for Drugs and Violence in elementary and high school. And these are some of the other programs that we have for safe and drug-free schools. Dropout prevention programs are also part of a single plan and a LEAP plan, because you have to address your most at-risk students. And so these are some of the things that we're doing. And you'll see in the single plans how our schools have individualized that. So that concludes my presentation of what you would find in one of our single plans and how it aligns with our LEAP. Are there any further questions?
Will hard copy of that be made available?
I can email that to you.
We'll put
Yes.
that in
Thank
the
you.
board, no, we'll put it in the board brief this
Okay,
next
thank you.
Friday.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board members? I believe that this would be the time to address any individual school, any individual principals that we may have questions for.
I think that Dr. White's presentation provided a basis for a lot of conversations, but I recognize that tonight's not the night to have some of those.
Ms. Deacon?
As I reviewed the site plans, I tended to look more at common themes that had kind of clustered across the schools, and a number of things jumped out at me. Become data-wise was one of the, I think, terms one of the principals coined, and it really goes directly to this idea of data-driven instruction and how we make sure that we're supporting our teachers in our request for them to do that. So I guess one of my questions might be to Mrs. White, how exactly, what support are we providing to do that? I know some of the principals talked about they want to increase facility with data analysis and use of data and progress monitoring in order to redesign instruction, make sure that the teachers have ability to access formative and summative student data and formats useful to the teachers. I noticed one high school has a PLC that's dedicated to data analysis
Yeah,
that
Dos
serves
Pueblos.
as a resource for school teachers. So because this is where we are, this is what we're doing, this is what we put our focus on, I guess I would just like to ask a little bit about the support that we're providing to the schools to do that.
That's a great question, and I think the public would be interested to know that we have one of our retired teachers, Wayne Cole, who works 3/4 time for EduSoft, and we have him as a dedicated manager, which means that he supports our PLCs. I think if you talk to, this is new for the elementary schools to have EduSoft. And so I think I can say with a lot of confidence that at the year-round schools, he's been in every single classroom and worked with the teams on accessing that information, how to read it, how to print accurate reports. I think that I can, with a lot of confidence, say that he is one of our teachers' favorite people to call, because if you call Wayne, he's there. He will be there immediately. So our elementary principals are using him as much as they can, and he is very accessible. If you text message him over the weekend with a question, he will get right back to you no matter what he's doing, even if he's on grandpa duty. I'd also like to mention that Eric Nichols, 25% of his job is working with the administrators with EduSoft. And we do provide small group trainings. We do individualized training. And I feel that our teachers would say to you that although we need to learn more about this, that we have support.
Go ahead.
Okay, because we have two board members who aren't here tonight, and I know that they have some concerns, I thought maybe I would just address a few of the other things that I know were interested in. There's a common thread throughout the site plans about the need for more parental involvement.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we all recognize that, and I'll believe that's really, really true. And some of the comments are things like parents want to do this, want to help, but they don't know how. And in some of the site plans, we saw examples of things that schools are doing. In other site plans, there was more discussion about the need to do that, but not necessarily formal ways that it's happening per se. To what extent do the schools share information about these strategies that work in terms of getting parents involved?
That's another excellent question. We have actually principal PLCs now. So our elementary principals are meeting once a month as a PLC, and our junior high and high school principals are also meeting once a month. And these are the types of things that they're focusing on. It's a focus on the instruction and on parent involvement and all kinds of ways that they can learn from one another about how to make the school stronger.
I know, having attended several Padres Unidos graduations with other board members, that we've seen how outside organizations can also be effective in getting parents involved, and it'd be nice to see that happening across the board. I'm glad you addressed the pyramids of intervention, because it was quite obvious that there was a lot of variation in those, and thank you for
Yeah, in fact,
us up to
in
speed
the
on that.
research, there's quite a lot of different types of pyramids that you will see being used across the country, because each community is a bit different, and so the way you set it up and the number of resources that you have can determine whether and how your pyramid is set up.
But isn't there an advantage to us to have continuity among those?
I would say that there's an advantage to us to having a generalized district pyramid of intervention that shows, possibly like the LEAP would have a pyramid. That would be something the LEAP team would work on. But for each of our schools are so very different, and they are implementing programs that vary in ways that I don't know that asking our principals to put together a cookie cutter mold is going to benefit them or their students or their parent population. I think one of the concerns is whether we're using those pyramids as a communication tool with our parents. And I know that the junior high schools have started to put their pyramids in their student agendas. And so that's something that, again, this is why having these principal PLCs is so beneficial, because we can talk with one another and find out which one of these tools is most effective with our parents and community.
Thank you.
Can I get a footnote on that one?
Yes, Dr. Noel.
To me, the pyramid is simply a metaphor.
Yes.
You're really talking, it's really a question of talking about identifying student deficiencies and student needs.
Yes.
And designing intervention and putting in place intervention programs for those students. And you made some reference to the question of identification at each of those decision points. And picking up on Mrs. Deacon's question, it seems to me that our schools ought to have comparable criteria for deciding when a student will be put into what so-called strategic intervention or so-called intensive intervention. Some of the plans had more grades of intervention, more different kinds. And I thought it seems to me that's a reasonable, not a cookie cutter to
Right.
say that we're going to have some fairly standard understandings about what it is that tells us that a child or an adolescent needs what kind of interventions.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's great about the Lexile levels, that and the scholastic resources that we have for doing Lexile level counts is that we do have standardized across the elementary and the secondary, placement in Read 180, placement in System 44, exit criteria, and those we were given support with those criteria from Sacramento County Office of Education because they've been using Read 180 now for almost 10 years, and so they have the experience of a number of students and when it's appropriate to place there. And our math programs, that's something that we're actually working on, and that goes through the LEAP Council, and we've been doing that over the past 2 years. And I think with junior high school, we're at a very good point where we're very consistent when students need intervention. And that kind of diagnosis happens at the beginning of the school year, which is the benefit of having the EduSoft program, is that we can do those analyses very quickly and place students very quickly at the beginning of the school year. So we are much more consistent than it may seem, and I think it would probably be very appropriate for our LEAP Council to put together a pyramid for you for this year so that you can see some of those district-wide consistencies.
Thank you, Mrs. Deacon. I appreciate your yielding.
Yes,
for that clarification.
and thank you for raising that issue, because we touched on the two concerns that I had. And I was actually coming at it from a different perspective, but with the pyramid of intervention, I was wondering how important it is to be uniform. And I understood you to say it would be helpful to have sort of a general
Yes.
uniformity, but then within that, some flexibility for the individual sites to maneuver. And I think with the use of the principal PLC, I'm very optimistic about that, because we have the experts, the principals who
right.
really know their sites and really know their teachers and their counselors and their students, able to kind of maneuver within a broader set of parameters. And I was wondering if there was too much emphasis on trying to get to uniformity. So I'm kind of glad that we're having this discussion and
Right.
thinking about how far we need to go towards uniformity and how much flexibility might be a good thing. And then also, the other issue was exactly the issue of parent participation. And so, as Ms. Deacon pointed out, some of the schools seem to be much more involved with some of the outside organizations that I perceive of as being a little bit more in terms of parent education, sort of parent training in terms of how to
Excuse me.
maneuver within the district policies, within the realm of academia, et cetera. And so I'm hoping that we can help, maybe
Support that effort. I think-
foster some of that
Yeah.
at some of the sites that have done it to a lesser degree, and maybe don't have the same connections with some of those organizations, that we might be able to help bridge those for those sites. Because I think as Ms. Deacon pointed out, we've seen some really wonderful results from some of these programs. And I think the schools that seem to be using them are finding that they're very, very effective at their campuses. So that was sort of my two big things, and it's interesting that those are the two things that seem to come up for most of us. So, one more question. Thank you.
I'm sorry. The principals are all here. We want to thank them for being here and taking this time, so I don't want to skirt over things too quickly. But the two other things that really jumped out at me were one was time and this tension between having enough time for professional development and then having a longer instructional day. And we want maybe both of those things, but it's almost impossible to do both. And with cutting budgets, it's even harder. So I don't have any suggestions or recommendations, but I certainly acknowledge those desires and hope that we can find some creative ways to address them. And the other piece was, and I also wanted to thank the principals for their frankness in talking about personnel issues. You know, that's not always an easy thing to do, but it certainly came through that there is this sense that we need to work with underperforming staff to we need to hire sooner if we can, because we sometimes lose good teachers to other districts because we don't hire back until August. So, you know, those are things that are on our minds, and I just want the principals to know that we care about that.
Thank you. And before we dismiss our principals, we do have a couple of public comments. So,
Okay,
Ms.
and
White, I think if you're, did you want to say more to us?
well, only that this is an action item, and so they do need to be
Yes.
approved by you.
Yes.
So
We will take action after we hear from our public.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Madam President,
Dr. Noel?
I had some more items I wanted to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, Dr. Noel,
I particularly was interested in your first slide. I think you called it initiatives,
Yes,
and it listed a whole bunch of programs.
yes.
What I find missing, and it's really missing at the district level, not at the individual site levels, is that for each of these programs, there is no plan for evaluating them. And that's to me a matter of great concern. And some of those programs have proper names, and they have outside consultants who sell them, and so on. Program evaluation, to me, is critical. Something else that's not in there is the costs to the district of each of those programs. So we as board members are unable to say that a program is cost effective because we have neither the cost data nor the effectiveness data. Frankly, that's a hell of a way to run a business.
excuse me, Dr. Noel, do you mean that the cost from the sites or the cost from the district?
District-wide.
Okay.
This is back, I've made the point on numerous occasions, if we
Right.
could have program budgeting.
Yeah, right, but I'm just,
So that for each item where we've made a commitment, like the Avid program, or I
Right.
have to put it back up for me to
but
recite some.
I'm just thinking, I was just wondering if that is probably a discussion for us to have as a full board about the district,
Well, it's
issue
part of my
because-
critique of her presentation.
because
Is that
I mean,
okay?
well, I mean, I'm not sure that that it's, I mean, it's certainly okay for you to do it, but Ms. White is not in a position to respond to why the district hasn't set up evaluation for our programs or how much we are spending.
Madam President,
So,
I will be quiet. If you don't
Well-
want to hear dissent and criticism, I understand.
Dr. Noel, I'm sure you accurately heard me say this is a discussion that we should have, but it's just not on this agenda item. So,
Talking about her presentation is not on this agenda item? Come on,
okay, well,
come on.
all right, we will leave it at that. I think you've finished your comments, and we will call our public comment. Kate Smith?
Actually, may I make a comment about
Sure.
that? Because the AVID program is evaluated. We have a Region 8. It's a supported program. The CDE supports the program, and so we are evaluated by our region. in our AVID program. And we do have a benchmarking system for Read 180. So we have an evaluation system, and we'll be bringing that evaluation data of the difference in our students' performance using the Lexile in January. It'll be our first benchmark for our Read 180 program. We're evaluated each year. We do have benchmarks for our math programs, and I would say that it's kind of interesting that you brought this comment up, Dr. Noel, because our Career Technical Education Committee just met with Russ Rumberger from UCSB. And Russ is on a number of committees for dropout prevention across the state and nationally. And one of the things that the Obama administration is very keen on these days is evidence. Is there evidence? And we do have the What Works Clearinghouse that the government put up, and almost no programs have been able to make the It Works status in the What Works Clearinghouse because the studies that are being done aren't stringent enough. And so one of the things that is coming out of the Obama administration is the responsibility of the education community to evaluate itself. And so it's not that we don't want to evaluate ourselves, it's just that's not something that's been done in the past. And I think we'll be seeing stronger and better evaluation of our programs in the future. We are one of the very few districts, I'm going to go back to AVID, we're one of the very few districts in the country that is a 412 AVID district, and with all of our junior high schools and high schools certified. And that's a big process. There's a rubric for evaluating that. In the AVID nationally has named us as one of the top 6 districts in the nation to watch, and one of the top 2 elementary. So we are being evaluated, and they're holding us, and they're holding themselves to higher and stricter standards for the implementation of AVID. So we want to do things that are evidence-based and research-based, and I think that you'll see some more of that coming from our programs as we move forward, and we're actually excited to bring that data to you.
And those will come back to us in a different report. They will not be part of single site plans.
That's actually not part of the single plan. Not
And
at this point, we wouldn't have that data.
Right. Okay, so we will look forward to those reports, and we will entertain our public comment on this item, and then we will proceed, hopefully, with action.
Thank you.
Okay, so Kate Smith, you will have 2 minutes on this item, and followed by Lane Wheeler.
Thank you, Dr. Noel, for mentioning the need for evaluation. I know that you understand that data can always be spun. AVID is not the only reason that the Obama administration is looking at this school district. Our school district is corrupt, and there is a great need to restructure it and make it accountable. I'm glad you mentioned the need for parent involvement. Apple Core is a parent-teacher partnership, and the pyramid of intervention is a black hole in education. RTI is also called refusal to identify. You just heard Cynthia White admit she didn't have the procedures or processes to identify those students who needed higher levels of intervention. RTI is a means to keep students out of special education. IDEA and ADA Section 504 mandates processes and procedures for seeking, testing, diagnosing, and treating learning disabilities, emotional disorders, and mental illness. So Dr. Noel was right on in terms of pointing out the fact that you can have a little pyramid and draw out all sorts of stuff, but unless
30
you
seconds, Ms.
have
Smith?
the procedures and processes, which Dr. Carol Miller admitted this district does not have. So, in the CDE self-review, there was a demand for a declaration of non-disproportionality, and I would like to submit to you the self-review declaration, and I'd like to state.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. You can submit that to the board in writing. Thank you. Lane Wheeler?
Good evening, Lane Wheeler, President of Santa Barbara Teachers Association. A couple of points I just would like to make. I heard tonight a number of times in Ms. White's presentation that teachers would like to say, or teachers want this. And it seems to be a common frame that I'm bringing back to you each time I hear that is, how has that assessment been made? How have those teachers been identified? How has that information been reported to administration and to you as the board members? And how is that information being processed and returned back to the stakeholders in the form of teachers? I talk to those same teachers, and I have, I would say, very differing opinions offered from what I constantly hear here. So I just want, again, to bring forth that concept of let's identify who we talk to, how we talk to them, how they're reporting their information, and how that information is being handled and then returned back to them as a usable piece of, as a usable resource. I would like to commend our district because through the collaborative bargaining process, we completely re-established our observation and evaluation process. It has been identified and linked to the teaching standards for the teaching profession, and if those processes are happening according to the procedures that are laid out in the contract, I believe that every teacher will benefit from those. Every speech and language person, every counselor. We have broken down those observation evaluation tools to really link out to each of those particular individual teaching professions, whether it be librarians, counselors, psychologists, regular ed teachers. And those processes are very clearly identified. There's evidence that needs to be established at each of those levels of observation and reported back to teachers so they can know if they're meeting the level, exceeding the level, or not making the level. And we have processes to support teachers that are not and to thank teachers who are. All of these add together to make a really great school district. And I think it's just important to realize that we are making strides towards those. I think it's really important to identify how we are connecting with our teachers and how we move forward on this. This cannot be a checklist of activities. We can't just say, oh, we have that in place now, check it off. We need to make sure that we're supporting those. For those of you who've been on the board a long
20
time,
seconds.
You remember when Open Court came on board and we had the Open Court coaches at every site. We had Open Court coaches retired over 5 years, and gradually our whole district came on board. So once again, that was an approach that certainly worked. It was a controversial program, and yet it seems to have been brought forth in a very constructive way. We'd like to see that kind of support offered to our teachers out there in the field. It's a very different classroom today than it was last year. So please be responsible and reflect on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wheeler. Okay, at this time, it would be appropriate to entertain a motion regarding the approval of the single plans.
Well, I would like to make that motion. I would like to move that we approve the single plans for student achievement for all elementary and secondary school.
Do I hear a second? Then I believe that I'm able to second it. Yes, I will second that motion. And I will call, do we have any discussion? Okay, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
I believe that means that our motion does not carry. Is that correct?
That's right, the motion does not carry.
Okay. So, what is it that we need for the single site plans to do in order for us to approve them, Dr. Noel?
Are you asking me why I voted no?
No, I'm asking what would, we did not approve the single site.
I don't feel comfortable approving them because I don't feel that the issues that are involved have been fully aired.
So what would you like is there something that you need from the for the principals to do before the next meeting, because they will
Madam
have.
President, you are the one who terminated the discussion. You know full well what I'm talking about.
That Okay, if you're talking about an assessment or an evaluation program for the various programs, that will take some time, I believe, and I'm not sure that it's really fair to hold the principals hostage for that duration.
I'm not holding anyone hostage, I'm talking about issues.
Okay, well, I apologize, principals. You will apparently have to return for future meetings. Your single site plans have not been approved. I appreciate all the work that you put into it. I appreciate your time here tonight. And we will try to expedite the process so that we can get you through this as quickly as we can.
Dr. Noel, would you like to share your thoughts with us now so that we could?
I tried that, and if there are other board members were here, that would not be a problem, I guess, but I would still vote the same way. It has nothing to do with who's here. It's how I feel. What I feel is important.
Ms. Cordero, we will bring this back, probably not to the next meeting, probably to the meeting at the end of November.
Okay.
And, well, that's it.
All right. Thank you again to the principals. We'll see you soon. Okay. We will now move on to item E2, the second reading and adoption of Board Bylaw 9323, meeting conduct.
Well, we had a board request to reconsider this bylaw. We have language that's proposed. You see that language on page 3 of 7. This has to do with decorum in the meetings, and specifically under item 5, when a person is wishing to be heard by the board and will be recognized by the president, how they are to proceed and what they are allowed. And that proposed language says that individual speakers are generally allowed 3 minutes to address the board on each agenda or non-agenda item. The time may be reduced by the board president. When a speaker wishes to comment on multiple items, his or her time may be limited so as not to interfere with the timely completion of the board's business. And in no event shall a speaker be allowed more than a total of 10 minutes at a single meeting. Since items on the consent agenda are considered in a single board action, comments from a single speaker on multiple items on the consent agenda are limited to a total of 3 minutes. And it goes on to the same language that we have had before, limiting public comment on each item to 20 minutes, and so forth. I had a correspondence with the board president, and she is recommending and wanted me to convey this to you, that rather than set a maximum limit of 10 minutes, she would prefer to see a limit set on the number of items that a person speaks to. And she would prefer that that be set at 3 items. And the precedence for this is a number of other boards that have enacted similar rules. We have our legal counsel, Craig Price, who has taken a look at a lot of those, and I'd like him to be able to speak to this if you're willing to ask him to do so.
Would board members like to hear from our counsel now or after we have, I think now, okay. Mr. Price, would you like to comment on this for us?
Several weeks ago, knowing that you were going to be revisiting this because of some issues that were discussed 3 or 4 months ago, I just took a survey at what some of the other districts had done, and just so that you would have a range of options to consider. One of them, of course, is the language that's in your board agenda with the italicized portion that introduces the concept that there's a total time limit per person per meeting. Another way of doing that is more...
Mr. Price, was that specifically the example of 10 minutes, or was that various times in different places?
I don't know what the origin of the 10-minute example is. However, it was talked about at the last board meeting that I attended, and so for, at least for the sake of discussion, that was included in your language. Another way of addressing the same issue, in LA Unified, their rules provide that each speaker is allowed a maximum of 3 minutes to speak and may only make a single appearance at each board meeting, with exceptions made for public hearings. And in addition to that, they also allow a speaker to comment on the non-agenda section. Obviously, LA Unified is a very large district, and one can see why they might impose that type of a rule. The board president had emailed that she thought that some consideration ought to be given by your board to perhaps 3 items per agenda. Obviously, 3 items per agenda comes out roughly to 9 minutes, which is, you know, more or less consistent with the 10-minute option. So those are just 2 examples, and you can, I'm sure, think of many other ways that you would like to, you know, fairly approach the situation.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Comments from the board?
Well, I think just in terms of logistics, maybe limiting the number of items makes more sense than going with a flat numerical number, because 10 minutes could translate into speaking on 10 different items for a minute each. And I think what we're trying to do is facilitate more effective functioning on the part of the board, and so that by limiting the number of items as opposed to the amount of time makes more sense. And of course, individuals have the option of providing things in writing if they want to speak to more than just, say, 3 items.
Any other comments? Okay, I actually had the opposite reaction. I wasn't, the idea of limiting the number of items isn't as appealing to me as limiting the time, because I believe that people can curtail their comments to the sort of the point of what they want to say. And if they wanted to speak for 1 minute on 10 items, and it would, you know, it wouldn't take any additional time. It wouldn't take any more time than if they spoke for 3 minutes on, you know, 3 different items. Well, it would take 1 more minute. So I'm more inclined to limit the time rather than the items, because I just feel like people then would have the opportunity, if they wanted, to speak on as many items as they want. We wouldn't be denying their ability to speak, but we would just be limiting how much time they can take. So they would have to be pointed in their comments. So this is on our action agenda. This is our second reading. So we, do we have any additional, we have a public comment. Ms. Smith, you will have 2 minutes to speak on this item. Please come to the podium.
Well, I need to know if you're telling my time already.
You are already over the 10-minute mark, so you are not being held to the 10 minutes. But I did.
Is the 10-minute rule already in effect?
We are not imposing the 10-minute rule, no. Thank you.
For the last several meetings, my time has been limited to 10 minutes. And yet I find that you have not approved that rule. Therefore, I have submitted a letter that states my civil rights have been violated by your inept meeting facilitation. My reputation has been damaged, and I have suffered emotional distress from your obvious contempt of me. This is a blatant attempt to silence public activists and suppress criticism. Who directed the board to illegally and unethically adopt a 10-minute limit per person before you approved it? I would ask that question, and I am demanding that it be answered. I believe it's Craig Price who spent 20 minutes last year telling you how you could limit her comments. She's not making any friends, he said. I got up and said, I'm not here to make friends, I am here to make changes. There is a breach of the settlement contract.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Do we have comments on, or further comments, or is there a motion to be made?
Well, I'd like to take a stab here at perhaps trying to persuade Mrs. Cortero. One of my thoughts about staying with minutes as opposed to limiting items is that, I mean, conceivably you could get someone wanting to speak on 20 items at 30 seconds each. So the pie could be divided as many seconds as there could be, whereas if you limit it to items, you're pretty much limiting it to items. I guess my feeling is that even though it's nice to offer people the opportunity to speak on more than 3 items, that the board, in its effort to be efficient and to do its job, is better when there's not so much turnover and the need to regroup to get back to the business at hand when there's that level of speaking. So I would like to just make the pitch again for 3 items that, maybe we could include speaking before closed session, before we go into closed session as an additional item. So there could be, say, 1 comment before closed session and then 3 during the open session portion of the meeting as a possibility.
I'd be happy to make a motion.
Okay.
Okay, I move that that the speaking be limited to 3 items. But in addition to the public comments before closed session not counting.
Okay.
Clarification, please. And also excluding any public hearings, statutory public hearings?
Excluding statutory public hearings. Yeah. 3 items, excluding hearings, excluding public comments before closed session.
I'll second
Okay.
that.
Okay, sorry, I'm just trying to write this down. Okay, can I know that we need a unanimous vote, so I'm willing to consider this. I'm wondering if we could add, or I'm trying to remember, I don't think anywhere else in here. Well, no, let's just leave it at this. Okay, I'm willing to go along with that. So we can call the question. We've been moved and seconded. All those in favor of adopting the language as amended to replace the language regarding a total of 10 minutes with language that includes a maximum of 3 items plus comments on the public comment before closed session and excluding public hearings. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, that motion passes. And I assume that we can put that into effect tonight, Mr. Price?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that brings us to our break. And we are a little bit ahead of time, but I think we'll go ahead and take our break here, and then we will return and hopefully stay ahead of time. So we will adjourn or break for 15 minutes, and we'll resume our current agenda. We will be pulling item E3, adoption of resolution 09-10-22, I'm sorry, 09/10-22, adoption of intent to convey easement and right-of-way Monroe Elementary School. Because this item requires a 2/3 majority of the vote, of the board, and we do not have all of our board members here. So we will be moving on to item E4, adoption of resolution 09/10-23, declaration of an emergency and approval to make a contract for labor and furnishing of materials or supplies, McKinley Elementary School sewer line failure.
Well, I'm glad we are able to act on this tonight. We do have enough board members for it. Dave Hetjunk will make the presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Sarvis, members of the board. As outlined in the agenda item, we do have a sewer failure at McKinley Elementary School. This sewer is on the steep hillside between McKinley and Ladera on the back side of the school. It's not safe nor practical to dig into that hillside for fear of damage to the property owners below. There is a city sewer line, as indicated on the sketches, that we could tie into. The project is in design right now. The project costs, at the time of the agenda, I listed the project costs at greater than $15,000 for bidding purposes. That's typically one of the limits where you have to start formally bidding thing. This project will probably run in excess of $100,000. That's proposed to be funded with deferred maintenance funds. That's why we have deferred maintenance funds set aside in case a roof fails or something major fails. We're able to replace it without having to dip into the general fund. And so an emergency will allow us to bypass the bidding process to get this project done sooner. It is a matter of life and safety and a great inconvenience to the students and staff at McKinley. We'd like to get it fixed as soon as possible. I've already talked with Priscilla Diamond at the County Office of Education. They're expecting the resolution. She's indicated with all the information given to her that Bill Cerrone would have no problem signing that resolution, that it is in fact qualify as an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Hetjunk. Any board comment on this item?
How long will it take to fix?
Not having the plans 100% complete yet, you're probably talking at least probably minimum 10 working days, maybe closer to 15. Some of the work will be done, can be done right away. Some of the work may involve some moving around of classrooms, working off hours. I would hope to have this done clearly within 30 days of having the plans in our hands.
Okay, thank you.
I would hope to have all of the functions of the school prior to when they come back from Christmas break, hopefully before they go to Christmas break. We have multiple people, working on the ideas, and thanks to some innovative thinking, we're able to come up with a solution where we can connect that in a rather expeditious manner.
What is a lift station?
A lift station pumps sewer uphill because it naturally flows downhill, and so if you don't have the flow, you need to pump it up, and
Don't say it.
No, but we say sewer line, but drinking fountains go into the sewer line and different things. So there's multiple things at the school that are affected besides just the toilets. It's sinks in the cafeteria, drinking fountains, so it's more than just the inconvenience of porta potties.
Thank you, Mr. Hetjunk. Okay, if there are no further board comments, I'll call public comment. Mr. Lane Wheeler.
Lane Wheeler, SBTA. A couple of quick thank yous to Mr. Hetjunk and to the principal, Emilio Handel, for really reaching out, make sure that the teaching staff there was accommodated as best they could, that they were able to have facilities available, that we were able to stay within contract. Really do appreciate that and want to thank them for making that accommodation as quickly and as efficiently as possible. Once again, I would encourage you to be as expeditious with this situation as is possible, as it does add a level of stress to the staff there and to the students there, and I won't go on to the inevitable amount of jokes that could be offered there. So please take immediate action. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wheeler. Do I hear a motion?
I will move that we adopt Resolution 09-10-23, Declaration of Emergency and approval to make a contract for labor and furnishing of materials or supplies McKinley Elementary School sewer line failure.
Do I hear a second? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. The motion carries unanimously. That brings us to our conference agenda, and it brings us to item F1, an update on the status of special education. I think many of us have been interested in hearing about this, and Dr. Sarvis will introduce.
And Tom Guajardo, our Executive Director of Special Education, will make this presentation.
Good evening, members of the board, Superintendent Sarvis. My comments will be brief. We had an update last week, and we'll have another one next week. But we're pleased to announce that Thursday we will be interviewing for our secondary Director of Special Education. We have 4 candidates coming in. And secondly, we are currently interviewing for secretaries and found some good staff last week, and we're having a second go around early part of next week. So the staffing is coming along nicely. The directors are all filling in. The program specialists have all come on board, and so now we need some secretarial help. And Dr. Carol Miller will speak about the parent forums we've been having. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Dr. Noel, did you have a question for Mr. Guajardo?
Well, yeah, it's about the ARRA funds. I read this in the board brief, that it says that your department and the finance department are going to develop a budget about the use of ARRA funds, supplement funds, stimulus funds for special education program. And I just wondered if there's any plan to seek public input and the stakeholder group input about the budgeting and about the plans and the budgeting that goes with them.
Well, there's 3 things happening there. Meg Jate and Dr. Miller and Dr. Mills and I sat down and took a look at some of the needs that we have out there. There are some basic needs and there are some extensive needs. For example, hardware, technology, professional development's a big piece. And secondly is we took a look at the FICMAT report and the work that the stakeholders have been doing there, and that's a big ticket item, so we've started allocating some resources for that. And thirdly, we know that there's some additional needs at the school sites, and we've started some communication with the school sites to see what their individual needs are as well.
But what I'm asking is there going to be any kind of process for inclusion? Because of course, talk and plans are one thing, but when you put money to them, they get very real. And I would think that the stakeholders particularly would feel less than comfortable with the idea that they're consulted about setting priorities, but not consulted about attaching money to priorities.
We can certainly incorporate some of that discussion. We have one more FICMAT stakeholder meeting after our next parent forum. So we'll have one meeting that I know that we're trying to get a date on for that. So the last community forum will be tomorrow night, and then we'll have our last FICMAT stakeholder group, and we can certainly address that there.
Well, I think that's very important. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Guajardo. Dr. Miller?
Actually, Dr. Noel, we do have a grid that we're working on that basically shows the person's responsibilities, the timelines, and the fiscal amount that it would cost for each of those recommendations. And we had planned to bring that forward to the next FICMAT work group. And then hopefully we'll have it ahead of time to send it out. That's what we've been working on.
Thank you.
Okay. Good evening. We've had 2 of our community forums on October 28th and November 2nd, and our 3rd forum will be held at Santa Barbara Junior High School tomorrow evening from 6:30 to 8:30. And the format has been informal to encourage discussion, and participants have talked about the FICMAT recommendations and areas that are missing from the study, as well as ideas for improving services and areas of concerns, specifically to student concerns, as well as general areas of concerns. And we've encouraged different ways to provide input. We've received verbal comments at the forums, as well as emails and written comments. And I also received a number of phone calls and I have reviewed all of the blue notes that we handed out and received at the forums. And we've addressed many of those concerns and have talked to almost every parent that had submitted a concern about specific child issues. And we've had some positive and some negative comments, and I just wanted to share a couple positive comments, and then I'm going to just review some of those areas. We did have note takers throughout both events, evenings, and we will have note takers tomorrow. And I collated them just roughly, and I wanted to share how they coincide with the work group's priorities when we did those dots and placed the priority dots. But one comment was, I appreciate your willingness to tackle the challenges of the past head on. My son absolutely loves school and enjoys the community time. Great teachers, caring staff, an obvious commitment to improving services to all students in special education, but we have a way to go. And we are working on that. It's very interesting in looking at the areas that came up the most. When the work group met, remember we prioritized by recording yellow dots on flip charts, and we came up with training as number 1. They had 57 dots, and organizational and supervision, 23 dots, communication, 23 dots, IEPs, 17, instructional assistants, 15, programs, 10, and then it goes down the list. In collating, and there were some repeats because we did have 2 note takers, and then I took individual notes as well. It's interesting that there was a lot of correlation between the priorities. It's interesting if you combine programs and instructional strategies, lack of continuous services, that was a combination of almost 25 to 30 comments. But if you divide them up, program was less than instructional strategies. And instructional strategies mean, for example, different ways of teaching special education students, how to tier the curriculum, how to work with general education teachers, sensory integration, multi-sensory approaches, things like that. The other huge area is communication. Another big area was instructional assistance, and probably one of the top areas were training, and also the IEP process. More emphasis on the IEP process. Show us how to make the IEP work for us, and how to teach teachers as well as parents and administrators how to make more effective IEP processes. And then there were other areas that came out that were in addition to the FICMAT. one big, well, I guess we did have it in FICMAP, but it wasn't as repeatedly. You know, for example, communication came over and over again. One area was the authority of the principal and what is the principal's role and how the principal can be more responsible for special education students. Quite a few comments about inclusion and integration, and a number of comments about collaboration and how to collaborate more with not just teachers and administrators and parents, but bring in agencies and to see how to work with agencies. And then another area that was repeated was parent knowledge and parent base, how to empower parents, and so to make parents more knowledgeable of what their rights are, and advocacy and conflict resolution. And other areas were resources and technologies. Assistive technology was a concern, and compliance, accountability, authority. Who has the authority to make the decision? Is it the principal, or do we need to contact the district office? And there were some comments on morale. So those, in looking at those areas, that's just a quick summary. What we plan to do is just sort them out into categories because there were a lot of repeats, and but that's great because it confirms that those are the areas that the FICMAT work group is looking at, and I'm pleased that a lot of comments, especially from the cards that came in, instructional strategies and programs, you know, how to have the parents involved in helping designing those programs and identifying, because they know what they use at home and what's working, and to work closely with the teachers in that area, and reaching out to other different instructional strategies. So those are basically, I mean, that's basically a summary of what's happening.
Right. Thank you very much. Are there any board comments or questions for Dr. Miller?
And we do appreciate Susan and Dr. Noel's involvement. They've been at all the meetings and been very helpful, and
great.
It's been a tough process.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought the meeting last night at Goleta Valley Junior High School was by far the most informative,
Okay.
and was particularly struck by the kind of generation of ideas and lists of things that people would like to see done. Thought that was extremely useful, and I have to say that that it was very, very well moderated. Very, very professional job that Professor Gerber did.
Correct.
Terrific job.
In fact, I was at a SEEK meeting and asked for SEEK's input on, you know, how could we do things differently, and have someone looking from the outside to the in to help moderate for us. And Dr. Gerber's name kept coming up over and over again. So I met with him for a couple hours, and we kind of talked about process and procedures, and he shared a lot of great ideas. For example, an idea of a kitchen cabinet, which I had where I came from, and it's bringing in the experts and working together. And I would like to lean on him heavily because of his recommendations and his organization and his structure of how to think of things, but yet keeping it more casual and open discussion. And every time I get frustrated, I bounce it off on him, and he says, well, there's a response to this, or there's an answer to this, and there's a process that you could follow. So he's been a great mentor.
Yeah. He and some of his PhD students have done a very significant volume of research on the intersection between English learning and learning disabilities, and the kind of complex interactions and identification problems. So I think we have a lot to learn from
him. Absolutely.
Well, and he's also actively involved in Harding's IB
Yes.
plan and restructuring. So it's nice he has as much time as he does to assist us.
Thank you very much, Dr. Miller. I've been hearing really positive things about the way that the meetings are going, and I'm really optimistic about tomorrow's meeting. I'm hopeful that you'll get a large turnout from the Spanish-speaking population to add their voices to this as well. But but I appreciate the work that you've put into it and that many people have put into it. And I'm hopeful that we really are sort of reinstituting some of the trust that may have been lost a little bit along the way. And I'm hearing that that seems to be happening, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Guajardo, because you were also part of that. We will now move on to item F2, a continuation of the first reading. Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Smith, as we spoke during the break, you are aware that we now have this policy of a limit of public comments on 3 items. You have exceeded that, so we will not be recognizing your public comments at this time. However, if you would like to submit any comments in writing, you are free to do so, and the board will read them. We will move on to item F2. Continuation of the first reading of Board Policies 4000 series. We have Dr. Robertson and Elaine Alvarado to introduce this item.
And they've waited a long time for the rest of this. Board, we had the remaining policies copied, or remaining part of the policy copied, just knowing that you may have mislaid your materials.
No.
I didn't want to have to
you brought
redo my
yours, right?
comments. I wrote
From
my
2
own
months
one.
ago? All right. This is a test.
Buried is the word, not mislaid. I know exactly what pile they're in the bottom
Buried,
of.
yes.
Good evening. Elaine was here the last couple of times to participate in this, and I was away, but I'm glad that she's here with me tonight so we can continue on. I understand that we're moving into the management and confidential personnel section, and so we're ready to take notes or answer questions or have a discussion with you about these particular policies. Kitty did come and work with my staff on looking at these and making some corrections and updating some of the policies, but I know there may still be some questions or issues that we need to deal with. So I'm ready to move forward with you.
Well, I think I will try to do this the way that President Parker has attempted to go through them, and that is I will we'll start with Board Policy 4222, and we will go forward until we have comments. So does anybody have any comments on 4222 BP or AR? Okay. 4222 exhibit. I don't think we need to comment on that. 4231 board policy or AR. Okay. Well, why don't I do it this way? Where's the first comment that somebody has? And we'll see how far we get. Oh, I'm sorry.
On page 284, this is AR 4313.2.
Okay. I realized that I had a question on one,
Okay.
a very, very small question on page 272. It's AR 4261.1. And it's 272. It's the third paragraph down, which is just one sentence. And it says, verification requirements shall not discriminate against any employee on the basis of his or her religious practice. And I wasn't quite sure what that would be referring to. I wondered if does that refer to, for example, people whose religion prohibit them from seeking medical attention? Because this has to do with verification, so I wasn't sure exactly what kind of verification would compromise somebody's religious beliefs.
It does follow verification.
Yeah.
After any absence
After-
due to illness or injury, the employee shall submit a completed and signed district absence form to his or her immediate supervisor. So
So if a person's religious beliefs prohibit them from seeking medical attention,
Yes.
what kind of verification do they provide? Or are they not required to provide verification?
It hasn't come up very much, but I think we would at least request that they put something in writing themselves,
Uh-huh.
indicating what the situation might be and any dates that might be impacted by that.
Okay.
We would do further follow-up with them, probably more personally, but it's a rare
Okay.
occasion.
And we're not really looking for the medical reasons on
Yeah.
a
Okay.
situation like that. We're just wanting to have verification that they indeed have a medical condition that would prevent them from being at work.
Okay,
based on
and
religious.
their sort of self-reporting would be sufficient? Okay, thank you. Okay, Ms. Deacon, you had?
I'm on page 284, and I discussed this with Barbara Kiani, so she may already have made this correction, but since it hasn't been made in the new copies we got tonight, I just want to make sure it happens. These two sections duplicate each other, where it says classified management and confidential personnel. They duplicate each other. You know
Right.
that.
Yeah, I think we made note of this last
Okay.
time, and we've taken note of that. So.
And that there's one typo in the paragraph, in the last paragraph, at least in the first section, it's the second line where it says, with the party initiating the reassignment hearing, it should be bearing the burden. It's correct in the second piece that duplicates it, but depending on which one you keep.
Did you find that, Chris?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What time, page 285?
Okay. Your next one?
I had a question in general. It's more about
Dr.
what I
Noel?
can't, it's about what I can't find than what I found. There was, I forget the number of the policy that has all the details about vacations and terms of employment, I guess is the term, for management personnel.
The management policies?
Yeah. I don't see that.
They're,
The very last, it's usually, it's towards the end.
Am I just missing that?
Well, page 2, let's see.
Which page?
310 addresses vacation holidays. You're asking about terms of,
Terms of what?
term of employment.
It had salary information, it had all kinds.
Vacation and holidays, would that be the one?
That would be part of it. Where is
That's
that, Mrs.
310.
Pardon me, 310?
well,
310.
and
I d-
page 303 is the management salary schedule.
Okay.
303,
I was not looking there.
and that goes on to health and welfare benefits. Yes.
I wanted to ask a question about that, because this issue I brought up before about modifications of the policy. And it struck me that with the policy was too detailed. It said too much. Therefore, changing the policy was a different issue. I hope you understand what I mean. I'm trying not to talk about something that I'm not allowed to talk about.
Sure, I do understand that.
Yeah.
And
Am I on point at all on that?
I think so, and I'm going to ask Dr. Robertson to address that. This, what we're looking at is an AR.
Are we looking at AR 4354.1?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is an administrative regulation, and this is how the administrative function works. And at some point, it is important to have that level of detail. And I'm thinking, and Dr. Robertson, you've been talking to CSBA about this, I'm thinking that we do want that in an AR rather than just loose someplace else. But that we need an attendant board policy so that we have direction from the board about it.
Well, see, what I don't
Yes.
remember is whether all that detail I was concerned with. I think that was a BP. I think that was a board policy.
And I don't see the board policy here.
Yeah, I don't either.
No, and there's been a lot of misunderstanding about this entire management area, and when Kitty came to talk to us from CSBA, it was important for her to distinguish what truly was a policy and what was more of a procedural process description, which much of this is or can be considered more of a process for how to do something. So the common areas between the 41s and the 42s and the 43s, she was keeping in as policy statements, but she was suggesting that we take some of these and turn them into actually administrative regulations with a brief board policy statement that would be attached to the AR.
Well, wouldn't that amount to then creating an actual board policy rather than an administrative regulation?
Yes.
And
Now-
and I didn't go looking to see whether they had a sample board policy, for instance, on 4351.1 that had to do with paying managers, and 4354.1 on 54.1 on retiree benefits and other benefits.
No.
Would it be
And she
possible to
didn't-
get
she
more
didn't have-
time on this one?
Oh, it
Because
certainly
I want to
would.
go back and find that old one, because I have it at home and I had notes all over it.
Oh, sure.
Which, because it seemed to me if my memory's right, the policy itself was very detailed and very long, and I would think that we would have much more flexibility if the policy were succinct.
Yes.
And allowed the
Yes.
AR to go into the necessary detail.
Well, at the same time, let me ask that we have time so that we can come forward with policies, with appropriate policy language that would lead to these ARs.
Well, I'll look at that and send you an email.
Okay,
And
great.
So
can I add something, though, that Kitty said, is that she
Yes.
could not match up some policies around the state with our management procedures, process board policies here.
Mhm.
It's kind of an anomaly, but she was focusing or helping us focus in on trying to get it down to where we can include as many of the same board policies with the 41, 42s, and 43s, and then look at whether we wanted to develop a board policy statement for some of these, or have just administrative regulation, or create a management handbook that takes this detail and makes it a handbook, which could still also be ARs, but it would be turned more into something when we hire management, they give them one of these handbooks, we review it with them, here's what you need to know, and then the board policies dictate our other practices.
So I'm looking for the pleasure of the board. Are we talking about just pulling? I'm looking at the ARs, but for AR 4351.1, 4354,
Well,
both.
Actually,
I'm sorry.
I was going to make a recommendation.
Oh, 4356.1, I don't know, 4361.31. I don't know what it is that that we want to
Well,
pull.
My recommendation would be that we take all of these remaining pages, 302 right on through 310. And I know there are various ARs and various board policies here that you ask us to take a look at those, organize them in a different way, and bring them back to you. And my intention right now, without talking directly to CSBA, would be to have a blanket board policy statement and then insert the various ones of these into ARs that would follow the direction that we would get, the policy direction we would get from the board on the board policy.
Sounds good to me.
That's my intention.
Okay.
Can I ask one
Yes,
question?
Sure.
I'm sorry, yes, Ms. Deacon.
Could you just restate what you said about the anomaly factor? Are you saying that what we do is different or is unusual than what other
Well,
districts do?
everybody does different things, but
Right.
in terms of her looking at our very old packet, which has not had a whole lot of update to it, she couldn't match anything that she has existing
Oh, I
with
see.
some of our things, which then she determined they're better as ARs
Mhm.
as opposed to a board policy. Although we can certainly develop a policy statement, but the AR then would be more specific and detailed to that. So there was a number of these that she didn't have anything for us, but felt that we should talk to you about administrative reg part of it.
Okay. Well, I'm certainly in favor of streamlining things, so if that's the end result, I'm in favor of that.
Okay, then we will be looking at pages 262 through 301. Are there any further questions or comments in those pages?
I do have something from Mr. Herron that he gave me on page 292.
On page 292? Okay, on behalf of Mr. Herron.
This is the question he had to do with the term, which is the fourth heading down below. And he was basically asking, do we do this? Well, we do have.
On page 291?
291.
Okay.
The fourth term, which is the word term, it's the fourth bold heading down. It says, agreement shall normally be made for 3 years. That is not our practice. If we do hire retirees after they've retired, generally it's as needed or by project or a year at a time. It's, we've not done anything for 3 years. And I've been here 11 years and never instituted this at all. Mostly a year to year or semester to semester or a period of time designated.
Would it work then to simply say agreements shall be renewed annually, be renewable annually?
Are some of them shorter than 1 year?
It could be a semester, it could be a special project only, which might take 2 to 6 weeks, something like that, so.
So we could just say agreements shall be made as needed by mutual consent of both parties?
Dr. Robertson, would as needed seem fit the practice?
Yes, it gives us some flexibility to take a look at what the project is and to assess the needs of the district and things that need to be done, and then work with the individuals.
Okay.
Based on that.
Okay, thank you.
Madam President.
Dr. Noel?
Yeah, I had a question about 291, because as I read the list of services, they're predominantly instructionally related. And yet, item number 2 above restricts this to management employees. And that seems a little inconsistent.
Well, I wasn't thinking of those services as being teaching.
Demonstration teaching. I mean, we don't look to our managers to do demonstration teaching. We look to our teachers.
But the others, for example, preparing staff development and in-service programs, assisting with testing programs, compiling and analyzing test data.
Yeah, those can go either way.
Yeah, I mean, I think seems to be only that.
Assisting new teachers is closer to instruction. And preparing and updating curriculum guides. I mean, that's, pretty substantive. Developing, updating instructional materials.
Well,
I just didn't quite understand the rationale for that very tight restriction to it being, since management means something. I don't understand that.
Well, I'm not sure I'm exactly clear on your question. You're
I'm
saying
not
that
either.
management should not be doing some of these things? Or?
No, I would say more like, I would just strike the word management, was an employee of the district.
But this is
under management and confidential policies.
Ah.
The whole thing is relating to management and confidential personnel.
Now,
Well,
these things we would not be limited to, and there are a lot of other things that we have done contracting with some of our management or confidential employees
No,
to do.
Yeah, I see the point. Now, but let me ask you this. Is there a comparable post-retirement policy for teachers?
No, it just occurs based on need.
But do
If
we
a
need a
site-
policy for teachers that is analogous to this policy? It seemed to me that they ought to be
It's a
given
practice.
equal treatment.
It is a practice that we have, not on a huge basis, but on a small number usually each year, where we might look at retirees to help fill a need. for, like, say, a period that we can't get filled and we don't have enough for a full-time teacher, so we can hire a retiree for that. It's certainly, there
Well-
could be a statement to that effect that matches this, because
And-
we do practice that.
And when we do that, it is regulated by the
I was going to say, that's
contract.
that's
the retirement
negotiable, probably, a negotiated.
Generally, we don't
So-
negotiate that, but we also make sure that all of our full-time regular employees are placed first, as well as anybody who's laid off, et cetera, before looking at what's still hanging out there that we need to get somebody to take on.
So maybe we can look into seeing if, excuse me, if that's something that we do need a policy.
Right, now STRS also dictates this, which is not policy, but they only allow employees who are retired to work up to a certain dollar amount each year, and that dollar amount changes. It's also come to our attention that as of July 1, they may be changing the policy totally, which would mean a retiree would not be able to work for 6 months after they retired before they could be hired to do any task. That's in the works right now with STRS, but I don't know yet if that's going to pass. But right now, they're limited by how much money they can earn, so they don't impact their retirement amount that they get each month.
All that notwithstanding, it seems to me that I sort of don't like the statement that we have this as a matter of policy for management, but not for teachers. It seems to me to make a statement to our teachers that they have opportunities comparable to management. Understanding completely that the facts are just as you described them, but we're talking policy.
We can add these to the
So
41
we're going to
and
look at
42.
at
Yes.
developing these for faculty.
Right.
But
Okay.
I do think that's the dilemma we're facing, that we have a certificated contract, we have a classified contract. We don't have a similar thing for management, and maybe we should just have a management handbook. Maybe we should pull these
Does the
things into a
contract cover
handbook.
retirees?
Uh,
I don't
it
think
could-
so. No.
It could have a section. In fact, this is an exhibit. I don't quite understand why it would be an exhibit.
Wait a minute, can we look at that possibility? And
Sure.
hear back? You know,
Sure.
What's
Sure.
wrong with the idea, or what's right about the idea? Thank you.
Okay. But for now, we'll be looking at just the
Yeah.
classified and management and confidential
Yes.
personnel.
In which case,
So-
I have no problem, although there are some things here are definitely, pretty instructional. But then again, I can think of management personnel who are highly qualified in that area, so I have no problem with this.
Any further comments or questions?
Could we go back to page 290 for just a second? And this is just a question on, under staff evaluating teachers, item number 5. It says, the Board of Education expects the administrators assigned to evaluate teachers shall, number 5, participate in at least one in-service per year in clinical supervision and/or other approved instructional and evaluation techniques. Do we do this? Do we offer these?
Recently, we have done this, yes.
Because it says at least one per year here.
Yeah.
And, we probably don't even call it clinical supervision anymore.
Yeah.
But it certainly
We know what it
what we do
means.
certainly fits the clinical supervision model, where you meet with someone in advance and you decide upon what the goals are and what you're going to be looking for, and then you have a post observation conference and you review that, and that's really what the clinical supervision model is.
Right, and in the last 2 years, since we've taken the old evaluation form and done away with it and created a new form, there's been more ongoing training, not only in terms of using the forms, but how to use the standards and look for that in the classroom when they're evaluating teachers.
Right, because there's two halves to that, the evaluation equation, and it's
Right.
both the evaluator and the evaluate team.
Correct.
Right. I also had a question on page 293. Under certificated management, the 4th paragraph down, it says, an employee who has served as an administrator in the district for at least 2 years shall have permanent certificated status in the district as a teacher. So does that mean if we hired someone as an administrator, they automatically have this status as a teacher, correct?
It has been our practice to do that.
I guess I'm again thinking about the evaluation piece, and this kind of is I don't want to call it a back door, but I mean, it's you're automatically considered a qualified instructor when you've previously been in an administrator capacity.
Right. Well, and that would be, we would look at that and very carefully evaluate that, and then we have a legal process that we go through for teachers that we can use.
That would apply to those administrators
That
now
would apply
serving
to
as
those,
teachers.
okay. If released.
Okay, then are we ready for a motion?
Yes, I move to adopt everything up to page
what are we
3.
covering?
We'll have to bring it back for a
What are we
second reading.
covering?
This is
300?
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize because I
That's all.
called for
Okay.
a
We're just
motion.
We're so action.
We were, I know.
We
I was,
want to get it over with.
I'm just excited that we're on our almost our last item, and it's only 9:30. But I didn't mean to slight you, Mr. Wheeler. We do have a public comment from Lane Wheeler, so thank you.
Lane Wheeler, Santa Barbara Teachers Association, and I believe this is my third time, and I have not exceeded my 10 minutes, so I think I'm still okay here. Board Policy 4315 is the management and certificated personnel evaluation and supervision, particularly the evaluation portion. We would like, Santa Barbara Teachers Association has talked a number of times and has looked at different evaluation tools that we might be using. We would encourage the board to look at a teacher, student, parent evaluation that produced a concrete evidence of what a administrator was doing well or not doing well. And we would ask that that might be included in this type of a policy. I'm not going to propose language because I think you're at the level where you could certainly come up with the appropriate kind of language. But, you know, getting that kind of public input, particularly from the teachers, it certainly makes it a two-way street, and I think encourages folks to work to their highest capacity. So I would just ask you to examine that and look for the potential to include some sort of collegial evaluation in this particular board policy. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Wheeler, which policy were you referring? 288? I'm sorry, okay.
Yeah.
4315.
Page 288, right.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so we can certainly consider that when we bring these back. Okay, so with that, we will move on. We will be returning to item D2 from our consent agenda. Dr. Noel, you pulled item D2?
Yes, I did. I'm concerned from Eric Smith a couple of weeks ago about it, that we have a budget freeze on all state categorical funds, and QEIA and TIIG are both state categorical programs. And that's the 1 to 3rd row and the 5th row of that table.
Well, by budget, yes, go
Mr.
ahead.
Tay, can you comment on that first?
QUIA is not state. It's not touched by the federal, it's not touched by the flexibility. It's not, it's on the restricted side, QUIA money. It's 7,400. It's a restricted resource.
I got a memo from Mr. Smith saying that those were frozen. These are not state categorical programs?
QUIA is state, but those state categoricals were unfrozen once we found out how we were going to fund that $552.83. But the QUIA was
so the freeze is off on those?
the freeze is off, but QUIA was never frozen because we can't touch QUIA.
Okay.
But you're right about TIG. It is in the flexibility, but it's under, we still restrict that on the unrestricted side if you want to. We do track it. We give money to each one of the sites on the TIG, and so, but it is monitored, and it is only given out a specific amnt towards each
It's a-
site.
And it's on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
That's correct.
So it's not frozen, and we are free to approve these expenditures if we choose.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
And tell me what TIG means again. T-I.
TIG.
I-G.
Targeted Instructional Improvement Grant.
Grant.
Thank you.
Very
You get a
good.
star.
I didn't
Very
go any
good.
further.
Want me to recite the California,
Okay, do
School
we-
Accounting Manual?
Do we have a motion then on this item?
Yeah, I move to approve those expenditures, under the understanding that we just had.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries unanimously. That returns us to the ending of our agenda. Coming events, we had several items given to us at the outset of the meeting from Dr. Sarvis. Are there any additional items we'd like to announce? Hearing none. Board comments and correspondence. I believe Ms. Deacon has an item to share.
I do. And I meant to bring this in before. I know there were board members and Goleta City Council members at the dedication of the Scott O'Leary Stadium, but I thought it was nice to bring in the program here, and sounds like they're having their homecoming game there this weekend, which is great. Also, I attended, along with Dr. Sarvis and Eric Smith and Meg, the Schools for Sound Finance meeting where we were with the other, the basic aid districts that surround us, and we were no longer wannabes, or at least we were bouncing in and out.
We
so
got to sit at the
we
same
got
table they
provisional
are.
status, I guess.
Yes.
And I'll have to tell you, it was a real eye-opener to be there and to learn about their dilemmas and ours, but they're saying that, you're a bigger lobbying force. There are more and more basic aid districts, but you're also a bigger target, and they're concerned about that. But there's 150 districts moving into basic aid, and some, like ours, have been cut into basic aid. And but CSBA now has membership that's representing some of those basic aid districts, which I think will be helpful for us. And lastly, I just wanted to share this. I think some of you have already seen this, but this is the girls' water polo team at DP that is a national contender. So anyway, wanted to share that.
Thank you. Those were some important items, so thank you for bringing those up. Okay, then do we have any future agenda items that we wish to bring forward? I know we already have a couple of packed agendas waiting for us, but are there any other items that we need to bring forward at this time?
We do have a board meeting next week, next Tuesday on the 10th.
And the following week?
And the following week. No, not the following week, but then on the 24th.
No, the following
but
week we
do-
have one with the city, with
we do
the
have
Goleta
a
City Council.
Joint city council and
Yes.
board meeting on November 19th.
So, we have quite a busy November. Okay, so, hearing no further agenda items, and with those announcements, and hearing no objections, I will adjourn the meeting, and I want it noted what time it is.